Hello everyone, Shannon Flummerfelt here for Flip Schools. Welcome to the Understanding Instruction series. This is one video in a series of 5, so I hope you'll take the time to listen to the other videos. This one is set up for central office administrators, and we're just going to have a real basic discussion about how to frame some of your thinking in terms of being able to find value and waste in instruction. One of the videos in this series will actually show you a tool called a value stream map, which is a way to visually manage value and waste. But this video here is just to frame your thinking around what value and waste might be in instruction and why it's important to understand it. Well, in terms of understanding instruction, one good way to do it is to really examine what's happening in instructional delivery and think about that instructional delivery as a process that is benefiting some stakeholders in your district. Key stakeholders may be students, maybe parents, maybe faculty, maybe building administrators, could be the Department of Education, whoever it is that you are actually focused on delivering value to as a stakeholder. So what we want to see in instruction is that there's an understanding that value exists in instructional delivery, and that value is both identified, recognized, and experienced by the key stakeholder that we're serving, whoever that may be. In this case, obviously, students would be at the top of our list in terms of a credo of stakeholders. So if we think about value, what is it? And we could say that value is any part of an instructional delivery experience. Anything having to do with the curriculum that's selected, standards that are used, whether they're Common Core state standards or other types of authentic learning standards, assessment, whatever's being done for that, the culture of learning and education that exists in your district and in your buildings, the instructional technology that's used. I mean, there's all kinds of elements to instructional delivery. But the idea is to understand value is that we would take a look at instructional delivery and then understand value from the perspective of our key stakeholders. In this case, we're going to identify students as the key stakeholders of instructional delivery. And that means that value is determined in instructional delivery by students as its worthwhileness in their learning. And so there's a lot of things sometimes that we have to do in districts that are not value. They're, in fact, waste. There may be a part of some of the requirements that we face as central office administrators in providing information to different constituents or working through some processes that have some driven by policy or mandates and so on. And so it's helpful to be able to understand if the work that we're doing in terms of instructional delivery is really value added, and that's determined by the stakeholder, and you figure out who your stakeholder is and you look at that through their eyes and whether or not it's delivering a value proposition to them. So it's really kind of a nice way to think about instruction, to understand instruction. And of course, there are elements of value and the counterpoint, waste, that you can't control as a central office administrator. There are things beyond your auspice that you are mandated, that you have to do, that are expected of you. But what I want you to think about are what are the things within your control that would help you to focus on value and delivering that in instruction for your key stakeholders, your students, as it would be seen by them as being valuable. And so when you can begin to think about that, it really is quite an eye-opening experience. So let's say, for example, that you have a requirement in your district, and the requirement is something that you've set up as the instructional leader in the district. You say, you know what, I'm going to require every principal in my district to make sure that they convey to their teachers that they are required to use at least one authentic assessment activity per classroom per month. So now, if you have that as a part of instructional delivery and you're trying to look at that as being value or not, what you'd have to do is walk in the shoes of your students who are receiving that authentic assessment activity, one per classroom per month, and say, does the student see this as being worthwhile in their learning? And, chances are with authentic assessment activities that, there would tend to be a big value add there for students. In fact, that is the major benefit of authentic assessment, is the way that it does benefit students in their learning process. So, but this question of value is really up to you to determine within the context that you're in with your students and what they would see as being valuable. Now, the counterpoint to value is waste. So as a central office administrator, you would take a look and say, well, we have a limited number of resources in our district, and they take time, they take money, we take a huge investment of social capital in order to have these things happen. So we'd want to be able to understand, is there any part of instructional delivery, again, in regard to any of the components of instruction, curriculum, standards, assessment, culture, anything else, that is seen by our key stakeholder, in this case we're looking at it through the eyes of the students, as not worthwhile for their learning. And again, if it's something that is within your auspice as a central office administrator and you have control over whether or not that instructional delivery aspect happens, and if it happens and it's not in the student's value stream as being worthwhile for their learning, then it's considered waste. And the thing about waste is, it's easy to get rid of waste. You just identify it, figure out where it is, and just say we're not doing this anymore, and create a transition plan to smoothly move away from that. So when we look at waste, again, it's only going to be determined by the stakeholder and what they think is worthwhile for learning. So for example, you may have a culture in your district where you as an instructional leader in the district encourage your principals to compete with each other on standardized test scores. And so what you'd want to ask is, does that competition on standardized test scores, when I encourage that competition between principals, does that create something that's worthwhile for students in their learning? And, if it's not worthwhile, then you could say that it's waste. And, in this case, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Again, that's all highly contextualized within your districts as to what's value and waste. But something like this does have the potential to represent waste in your district. So I hope you'll think about value and waste maybe in new ways, and again, using those to help you to understand what should be done in instruction to enhance your decision making. As you work in a flipped school or a flipped instruction type of mode, these types of questions are always present, because a part of flipping is trying to enhance what's valuable in instructional delivery and eliminate what's wasteful in instructional delivery. And so again, whatever part of instructional delivery you're looking at and whether or not you're using flipped technology, you want to really run this through the question of what is value and what is waste as it's seen by my key stakeholders in regard to instructional delivery. So I hope this helps you to enhance your thinking, sharpen the sharpen the saw a little bit, and give you a little better viewpoint on what to do about these flipped environments here. But if you'd like more information, we do have a Flip Institute website, and you can find that at theflipinstitute.com. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video.